Sacco and Feliz, New York and New Jersey's premier attorneys at law. Their team brings decades of experience across a wide range of practice areas. Whatever life brings, they're your legal team. From everyday matters to complex cases, they've got you covered with the experience you need and the results you want. Because when life gets complicated, they make it simple. SaccoFeliz.com. SACCOFILLAS.com. 2 C's, 2 L's.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
I am now about to speak with Nazli Parvizi. She is president of the Museum of Food and Drink. Some of you dumb people in the United States of New York may not even know that we have a Museum of Food and Drink. Tell me about it. What is the Museum of Food and Drink doing for us?
Hi, Cindy. Thank you. The Museum of Food and Drink is like any other museum, but we take a really joyful view towards tackling the same topics that everyone else does. I think food is really universal. We all eat, and it's not intimidating. We try to create a really welcoming atmosphere to learn about ourselves and the people around us. Sometimes there's a lot of hard topics and things can be intimidating and art can be intimidating, but food we hope is not. So, with our recent exhibition, street food vending, and the history of it around New York City, for example, it's a wonderful way of learning about New York City immigration, but through the lens of street food, something that we've all hopefully had at least once in our lifetime, right?
Okay, my friend who's with me and who's the engineer here and the smart one, he has been to the museum, so he was going to tell me about it, but he didn't. So you have to tell me exactly. Both of us were talking about we live on coffee in the morning. Tell us about how terrible coffee is for us.
I will never say that. You know what? I love that you asked me that. We're not the museum of good food. We're not the museum of healthy food. We're in no way judgmental, right? So we're this small, great museum in Dumbo, Brooklyn. So I'll get the facts out first. We're located right in Brooklyn Bridge Park. But, for us, food is about joy. It's about connectivity, and it's about welcoming everyone to the table, but we're not there to lecture people on nutrition. And I think that's one of the things people confuse it. And I think it's one of the things that takes the joy out of food, right? Especially with the way people are so concerned these days about, and the message is always changing about what's good for you and what's not. I think our job as any museum is to educate and let people make choices when they actually feel like they know the facts. What you do with the facts is up to you. Our job as a museum is to educate you. But enjoy the coffee. My feeling, I think a lot of us sort of feel like, there's a lot in the food system that is deeply broken. It hurts the environment. It often hurts the body. But we also think that everything in moderation is, if it's part of your culture.
Okay, why was the Museum of Food and Drink created in the first place? For what purpose? And when and why?
It was created about 10 years ago because our founder, Dave Arnold, looked around and said, why isn't there something like the Smithsonian dedicated to food? It is literally something we all eat. We all eat. We all sort of interact with food. We all interact with restaurants. Every single, whether it's farming, food production, every part of our lives is touched by food. How come we're not studying this? How come we're not taking a look at all the different aspects of it in a sort of academic way through a museum? Simple as that.
Okay, so now tell me, now that we've done all of that, tell me exactly what the hell you're telling somebody. If I came up and I asked you what would you tell me?
If you ask me what is the museum or what's happening inside.
I don't care. I'm flexible. Tell me anything since I don't know about the damn museum.
What I'm telling you is I think that the world can be a messy place. I think that there are things that we want to learn about. So like today, immigration is a really fraught topic. And I think that when you come into our museum, for example, and come to Street Cart City, you'll see the cycle of New York City from the 1600 onwards, and you'll see what the waves of immigration, and it's not always a great story. We celebrate diversity in New York City, but you'll see that every time there's a wave of immigrants, they haven't been treated well. And through the story of street food and through the story of what it takes for these immigrants to kind of start these small businesses, these entrepreneurs, and the foods they sell so that they can feed their own families, you get this incredible look at the way they've not just sort of helped themselves and kind of climbed that economic ladder to become, successful New Yorkers, but you also see how, like, in that process, they fed us and created these iconic foods that have defined American food and especially New York food. These are the ways that you learn. And then, of course, our museum, you get halva, you get pretzels, you get nuts for nuts. We have all these things that you can eat, and it's a multi-sensory experience, because that's a wonderful way.
Okay, what is your background? What is your background?
My background, I studied food anthropology at Barnard College, so I went to school in New York City, and then I pivoted. I worked in government for a big part of my career. I worked at the mayor's office under Mayor Bloomberg for a long time, running community affairs. So I've been in nonprofit and community engagement for a very long time.
Well, if I came in, what would I be looking at in the museum?
Well, you'd be looking at a lot of vintage street carts, so you could sort of see what the hot dog cart looked like in the 1940s. You could put on VR headsets and literally go into a food cart, feel like you're inside, see what it's like to work inside those tiny spaces and be making food. You'd learn what it's like to actually make a food truck. And you'd see some of the earliest forms, whether it's a baby carriage or baskets. You could play an arcade game. So again, all kinds of things that you could sort of see and touch and kind of play with to get a sense of the story that we're trying to tell.
So Nazli, what would have watched over us before? What you're telling me, I understand. But if you go back before the museum operated, what would we have learned, or how would we have learned it before?
It's a great question. I think that what often happens is you have the food industry telling you a story about the food they make. So it's not really a museum. It's not meant to educate. They're telling you a story about an ingredient, whereas we're trying to tell a story about ourselves and our country and the way that our history, right? And I think that's why we created the Museum of Food and Drink. There was nothing like this, right? So I think that's why we really wanted a museum.
Give me an example. If somebody came in, what would they have asked? What did they want to know?
I think sometimes people stumble into our museum and they'll sort of say, hey, I love hot dogs. I came in here because I was interested in the pretzels or hot dogs I ate. And what they actually come away with is this sense. Somebody said this and it made me feel a little bad. They said, you've really humanized what it's like to be a street vendor. You've really humanized them. And I thought, well, I didn't know that anybody didn't think they were humans, but I appreciate what they were trying to say. They sort of pass by street vendors as if they're street furniture. And I think that's what we're always trying to do, is we're trying to humanize this vast system that is our food system and the people who work behind the scenes, whether it's the dishwashers, the farmers, the farm workers, the street vendors. We're trying to tell a story so that you understand what's on your plate and how it got there and who made it and who's responsible for getting it there.
I think that's a great idea. Now, give me an example of what you might tell somebody. I know about street food. I'm a street food eater. I'll eat anything that they've got. It's wonderful stuff. But tell me a story of what they need to know and what you taught them. What did they learn by coming?
Let me tell you a great story about a woman named Pigfoot Mary, who's an African-American woman who came up to New York during the first waves from the South, escaping the South and coming up to the North. And she started out of a baby carriage making pig's feet. And she did so well. This was in the mid-1800s. She She had lines around the block. This was obviously before the internet, before electricity or anything. And she had lines around the block. Her food was so popular. And she then was able to create a food cart that fit her needs. And she became one of the richest women and one of the richest African-American women in America at the time, based on this sort of humble street food. And what she was doing was bringing a taste of home to a lot of people who were sort of forcibly displaced from their home, from their South, and had to go up to the North. And she built a success. By the time she died, she was worth, in today's dollars, almost $5 million, I think, making her one of the earliest female African-American millionaires. So what you'll learn is stories of resilience like that. You'll learn about the Radusky family. Now that it's Passover, everyone's getting these great jelly-covered things and halva. They started out as street vendors in 1914, and now they have this great factory in Bushwick. And it's the same family that's still making the halva and these wonderful chocolate-covered jelly rings. There's a long legacy in New York City of these people who started out selling food on the streets and have gone on to open factories or stores like Russ and Daughters. They're wonderful family stories that resonate even today, and that kind of carry these through lines for 100 years throughout our history in the city.
What's the foods in that they're taking to the moon? What are they taking? They're not taking halva to the moon. So what else are they taking?
It'd be fine. What are they taking to the moon? It's an interesting question, because so many of the foods we eat here have been developed for the moon. So everyone kind of famously knows Tang. Remember that powdered orange drink that a lot of folks drink? There's a special oven that's been created to sort of make brownies on the moon. But there's so many interesting considerations for what you can eat in space. And I think the technology maybe more helps us down here than it does up there, but it's got to have all the nutrients they need. You can't just be boiling water. Like, it's got to be gravity safe. It's got to be heavily packaged. Unfortunately, it can't be that fresh. It's got to be preserved, right? Because sometimes they stay in the space stations for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. The bigger question to me is, what do the folks up there really miss? What's the first thing that they eat when they come back? Because I don't think it's fine dining up there. And I think it's moments of like that, people who've been away from home cooking and fresh food.
Okay, what did you have for breakfast? What did you have for breakfast?
I am in Los Angeles right now. I'm here celebrating Persian New Year's with some cousins and visiting some friends. And I went to an Armenian bakery yesterday and had my absolute favorite pastry, which only my mom, I thought, made well. And it was just so incredible to be able to have this pastry. It feels like home. It's called nazok, and I could eat 10 of them. They're so good. They're so hard to find. They don't exist in New York. And it's just been incredible to be able to have this pastry that is such a part of like my childhood.
Okay, what are you doing now? What are you doing now? If you have your museum and we have the people who are schlepping up to the moon, tell me what you're doing now. What are you doing for Easter?
So Easter is with my friend's family always. So they're having an Easter feast. My day-to-day is running a museum. And as you know, with all the funding cuts everywhere, especially to cultural institutions, my day-to-day job, I wish I could say, is like exploring food everywhere and getting to eat. But it's really trying to figure out how to keep a museum going and getting visitors to come visit us. So I'm grateful to you for talking about the museum with us. But there's always time to slow down and celebrate. So Easter is with my best friend's family. And there'll be a ham, and there's a vegetarian there, so I guess there'll be something vegetarian that'll.
Okay, tell me, since I've not been there, what is inside the museum? If we were to come, what do we see besides you?
You come up to the second floor at 55 Water Street in the Empire Stores building, and it's this very welcoming space. And what you'll see is our great exhibition, and it starts with what we call the mega cart. We sort of built out a stylized version of a giant food cart, and that's where you see all these really interesting facts and photographs and portraits of food vendors and street vendors, where you can see the VR experience. You'll actually get to play with the street cart. You kind of move it around so you can kind of see what it's like and how heavy they are. When you see people schlepping these things through the street, you have no idea how hard it is through the cobblestone streets and through the sidewalks of New York. So you'll get a physical sense of what it's like to all around the street cart. We have an arcade game. We have lots of beautiful, beautiful movies and videos. Just to give you a first-person idea and interviews of what it's like to be a street vendor. And then, surprisingly, one of the surprising parts that everyone really loves is actually a section on how to build a street cart. And we interview a wonderful man named Ernie Wong who goes through what it's like to actually build a truck. He's the go-to guy for a lot of folks. And
tell me, since you're mostly talking about the street carts, tell me, what do they have in them, and how long has their halal or whatever the hell it is been in the thing? Probably 6 months before you buy something. Tell me about it. Tell me about the street cart, because I eat off the street carts. I love the stuff, but I don't know how many years it's been in it.
I'm so glad you asked, because actually every single street cart has to go back to a commissary every night, where they have to get rid of all the food. This is by the Department of Health rules. They have to get rid of all the foods. They have to wash down the entire street cart, almost like a car wash process. And then the next day, sort of in the middle of the night, they prepare the food in the commissary kitchen again, load up the street cart, and off they go again. You cannot store food in the street cart. It has to get cleaned out and washed every single night. If you are a licensed street cart, which the majority of food trucks and street carts are, you have to go through this process. And the Department of Health does inspections like they do every other restaurant. So this idea that the food is like old or is not fresh or whatever. And I think that's the interesting thing about street food is oftentimes from the very beginning, it was a way for immigrant communities to access fresher food than what was available to them in the stores. So you had girls running to farms in Brooklyn and Queens to get fresh fruit and bring it back to the Lower East Side or bring it back to the city. Yeah, it's very fresh food. And
so you're mainly talking about street food. Is that it?
It is. We show one exhibition at a time. So this particular exhibition is the history of street carts. We also have wonderful programs in the evenings where we talk about a range of topics, whether that is, we had a show on spam last week. We have a show coming up, a program coming up on pickles next week, which will be fantastic.
Tell me about what the hell can you do about a show on pickles? And then what do you do a second show on sauerkraut? What are you talking about?
It's a program. So we have these great evening programs. They last about an hour and a half at night. And audience members can come in, they can see the exhibition, and then we sit and have like sometimes a book talk. So there's a great book coming out called Pickle City about the history of pickles in New York. And it's great. The authors are going to talk about this great book and the history of pickling and some of the, and really it's focusing on kind of the European pickling story and how that came to New York City. We'll have lots of bites, pickled herring. I think we'll have some pickled lemonade, but all kinds of pickle tastings. And I love our programs. They're a wonderful way of meeting with cookbook authors and food experts and talking about these like sort of very niche topics that people are really interested in, and then eating wonderful food and drinking and just
tell me about the food carts themselves, since I understand that this is basically what you're talking about. So where do they get their food from? How do they keep it refrigerated? How do you know how safe it is?
They buy their food anywhere else, like at restaurant supply depots or farmers markets, everywhere that restaurant owners buy foods. And when you get to a street cart, it's mostly the assembly. The majority of cooking isn't done in the street cart or in the street truck. And in terms of the freshness and everything else, it is, as I said, it's like any other restaurant or food business. It is a heavily regulated industry. They get inspected like everybody else. And also, as you know, it's bad for business. You know, in this day and age where a bad food review, or if you get food poisoning, you call Department of Health, or all you have to do is write it on Google. You know, food trucks are Google reviewed like every other restaurant too.
Who does a food review on a cart that's on 51st Street and 2nd Avenue? What are you, crazy?
Everybody.
Who's doing a food?
Everybody.
Okay.
You can find food trucks on Google too, and there's thousands of reviews for them. Isn't that amazing? So anybody who goes and says, hey, I've had this great like halal dish and it was go to this one, they have a lot of competition. You know, the ones on 51st Street, there's like 10 of them now. So everybody wants to know which is the best one. So they go and read the reviews on Google like they do on any other restaurant.
Nazli, you have been wonderful. I am up to my behind now in food carts. I really don't need any more. And I thank you very much for being president of the Museum of Food and Drink. Just tell us where the hell this is and then get off.
Cindy, thank you so much. We're at 55 Water Street in Dumbo, Brooklyn, second floor, Brooklyn Bridge Park. Come visit us. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on, honey. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.